The Dog Crusoe and His Master, Chapter 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Allison Hester of Athens, Georgia. The Dog Crusoe and His Master by R.M. Valentine. Chapter 6. The Great Prairies of the Far West. A remarkable colony discovered, and a miserable night endured. Of all the hours of the night or day, the hour that succeeds the dawn is the purest, most joyous, and the best. At least, so we think. And so think hundreds and thousands of the human family. And so thought Dick Varley, as he sprung suddenly into a sitting position next morning, and threw his arms with an exulting feeling of delight round the neck of Crusoe, who instantly sat up to greet him. This was an unusual piece of enthusiasm on the part of Dick, but the dog received it with marked satisfaction, rubbed his big hairy cheek against that of his young master, and arose from his sedentary position in order to afford free scope for the use of his tail.
"Ho, Joe Blunt! Henry, up, boys, up! The sun will have the start of us. I'll catch the nags."
So saying, Dick bounded away into the woods, with Crusoe gambolling joyously at his heels. Dick soon caught his own horse, and Crusoe caught Joe's. Then the former mounted and quickly brought in the other two. Returning to the camp, he found everything packed and ready to strap on the back of the pack horse.
"That's the way to do it, lad," cried Joe. "Here, Henry, look alive and get your beast ready. I do believe you're goin' to take another snooze."
Henry was, indeed, at that moment, indulging in a gigantic stress and a cadaverous yawn. But he finished both hastily, and rushed at his poor horse as if he intended to slay it on the spot. He only threw the saddle on its back, however, and then threw himself on the saddle.
"Now then, all ready?"
"Ay, oui, yes." And away they went at full stretch again on their journey. Thus day after day they travelled, and night after night they laid them down to sleep under the trees of the forest, until at length they reached the edge of the great prairie. It was a great memorable day in the life of Dick Varley, that on which he first beheld the prairie, the vast, boundless prairie. He had heard of it, talked of it, dreamed about it, but he had never, no, he had never realized it. 'Tis always thus. Our conceptions of things that we have not seen are almost invariably wrong. Dick's eyes glittered, and his heart swelled, and his cheeks flushed, and his breath came thick and quick. "There it is!" he gasped, as the great rolling plain broke suddenly on his enraptured gaze. "That's it! Oh!" Dick uttered a yell that would have done credit to the fiercest chief of the Pawnees, and, being unable to utter another word, he swung his cap in the air and sprang like an arrow from a bow over the mighty ocean of grass. The sun had just risen to send a flood of golden glory over the scene. The horses were fresh, so the elder hunters, gladdened by the beauty of all around them, and inspired by the irresistible enthusiasm of their young companion, gave the reins to the horses and flew after him. It was a glorious gallop, that first headlong dash over the boundless prairie of the Far West. The prairies have often been compared, most justly, to the ocean. There is the same wide circle of space bounded on all sides by the horizon. There is the same swell, or undulation, or succession of long, low, unbroken waves that marks the ocean when it is calm. They are canopied by the same pure sky, and swept by the same untrammelled breezes. There are the islands, too, clumps of trees and willow bushes, which rise out of this grassy ocean to break and relieve its uniformity. And these vary in size and numbers, as do the isles of the ocean, being numerous in some places, while in others they are so scarce that the traveller does not meet one in a long day's journey. Thousands of beautiful flowers decked the green sward. The numbers of little birds hopped about among them.
"Now, lads," said Joe Blunt, reining up, "our troubles begin to-day."
"Our troubles? Our joys, you mean?" exclaimed Dick Varley.
"P'raps I don't mean nothin' o' the sort," retorted Joe. Man was never intended to swaller his joys without a strong mixture of troubles. I s'pose he couldn't stand 'em pure. You see, we've got to the prairie now."
"One blind hoss might see that," interrupted Henry.
"And we may or may not discover buffalo. And water's scarce, too, so we'll need to look out for it purty sharp, I guess. Else we'll lose our horses, in which case we may as well give out at once. Besides, there's rattlesnakes about in sandy places. We'll have to look out for them. And there's badger holes. We'll need to look sharp for them, lest the horses put their feet in 'em. And there's Injuns who'll look out pretty sharp for us if they get wind that we're in them parts."
"Yes, Miss Boys, and there's rain and thunder and lightning," added Henry, pointing to a dark cloud which was seen rising on the horizon ahead of them.
"It'll be rain," remarked Joe, "but there's no thunder in the air just now. We'll make up for yonder clump of bushes, and lay by till it's past."
Turning a little to the right of the course they had been following, the hunters galloped along one of the hollows between the prairie waves before mentioned, in the direction of a clump of willows. Before reaching it, however, they passed over a bleak and barren plain where there was neither flower nor bird. Here they were suddenly arrested by a most extraordinary sight. At least it was so to Dick Varley, who had never seen the like before. This was a colony of what Joe called prairie dogs. On first beholding them, Crusoe uttered a sort of half growl, half bark of surprise, cocked his tail and ears, and instantly prepared to charge. But he glanced up at his master first for permission. Observing that his finger and his look commanded silence, he dropped his tail at once and stepped to the rear. He did not, however, cease to regard the prairie dogs with intense curiosity. These remarkable little creatures have been egregiously misnamed by the hunters of the West, for they bear not the slightest resemblance to dogs, either in formation or habits. They are, in fact, the marmot, and in size are a little larger than squirrels, which animals they resemble in some degree. They burrow under the light soil and throw it up in mounds, like moles. Thousands of them were running about among their dwellings when Dick first beheld them. But the moment they caught sight of the horsemen riding over the ridge, they set up a tremendous hubbub of consternation. Each little beast instantly mounted guard on top of its house, and prepared, as it were, to receive cavalry. The most ludicrous thing about them was, that although the most timid and cowardly creatures in the world, they seemed the most impertinent things that ever lived. Knowing that their holes afforded them a perfectly safe retreat, they sat close beside them, and as the hunters slowly approached, they elevated their heads, wagged their little tails, showed their teeth, and chattered at them like monkeys. The nearer they came, the more angry and furious did the prairie dogs become, until Dick Varley almost fell off his horse with suppressed laughter. They let the hunters come close up, waxing louder and louder in their wrath. But the instant a hand was raised to throw a stone or point a gun, 1,000 little heads dived into 1,000 holes, and 1,000 little tails wriggled for an instant in the air. Then a dead silence reigned over the deserted scene. "Bien, them's have dive into de boils of de heart," said Henry with a broad grin. Presently 1,000 noses appeared and nervously disappeared like the wink of an eye. Then they appeared again, and 1,000 pairs of eyes followed. Instantly, like Jack in the box, they were all on the top of their hillocks again, chattering and wagging their little tails as vigorously as ever. You could not say that you saw them jump out of their holes. Suddenly, as if by magic, they were out. Then Dick tossed up his arms, and suddenly, as if by magic, they were gone. Their number was incredible, and their cities were full of riotous activity. What their occupations were the hunters could not ascertain, but it was perfectly evident that they visited a great deal and gossiped tremendously, for they ran about from house to house and sat chatting in groups. But it was also observed that they never went far from their own houses. Each seemed to have a circle of acquaintance in the immediate neighborhood of his own residence, to which, in case of sudden danger, he always fled. But another thing about these prairie dogs, perhaps considering their size.